Welcome to Chat B2B, the podcast that gives you a front row seat to AI and B2B marketing. I'm your host, Andrew Rao, co-CEO of Intercept, and today's guest is Tristan Retelsdorf. He's the VP of Marketing and Revenue Operations at TELUS Agriculture and Consumer Goods. And in our conversation, he shares some fascinating AI use cases. Everything from qualifying leads to analyzing customer feedback to verifying customer contracts. And we explore what does it take for marketers to become great AI agent managers. If you like what you hear, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. This is Chat B2B. Let's get into it. So Tristan, a lot of people know TELUS for phones, connectivity, cute animals, all right, on the consumer side, and on the business side, networking, IT, security, and all that good stuff. Now, your world is TELUS Ag and Consumer Services. So for somebody that might be hearing that for the first time, what does that world entail?
Yeah, it's a question I've gotten a lot over the last 7 months, Andrew, since I've kind of stepped into the role. So I think what you want to do is, first thing you want to think about is 3 separate business units. So agriculture, animal agriculture, and consumer goods. Those are our 3 big lines of business. And really what we sell is, it's a variety of software and consulting services to professionals in those 3 segments. Right. And we're in 60 countries around the world, 60 plus countries.
Wow.
So, one of the things is, okay, what do these 3 segments have in common? And it actually turns out they all face a very common reality, which is the environment in which all 3 are operating are challenging, they're rapidly changing, there's high stakes decision making. There's a whole bunch of unexpected events, right? Whether it's political, social, environmental. You've got limited time, you've got limited resources, and then there's a whole bunch of burden, both from a compliance perspective and a regulatory perspective. So, like our core telecommunications business, one of the core philosophies that we have at TELUS is we think data can help with those problems. So TELUS Agriculture and Consumer Goods, we believe that, it's kind of 3 things that are working together. There's great products that we produce. We provide actionable data to our customers, and then we have valuable expertise. And really the goal is, whether you're in animal ag or consumer goods, we want to make sure that you feel like you can make the right call at the right time every time. And that's really what's required for you to grow. So that's really what we're all about. We're built for growth, and we want to see our clients be successful, all while trying to improve the safety, the security, the sustainability of what we grow, buy, and eat all around the world.
I love it.
So that's what we're all about.
It's such an expansive business unit, and what I like about what you just said is that, to me, as you know, like, we're obviously, we deal a lot with like global enterprise tech. This is about the tech, but also applying it to actually drive the outcomes, right? Because people all the time buy tech stacks and they're like, yeah, I bought this thing. I bought this great platform that's like a Ferrari, but I'm in first gear, or I don't even know how to drive it. It sounds like this is really about helping people actually get value from their investments too, which I feel like is a missed opportunity in a lot of cases.
Totally. Yeah, that's why we talk a lot about data. We talk about actionable data. Yes. To your point, Andrew, it always has to be attached to a motion. How am I solving a pain? How am I providing a gain? Data for the sake of data is not helpful, but when it's attached to a real business income, then it becomes really interesting. So that's definitely one of the narratives that we're trying to talk about in the market.
Yeah, and just congrats on all the growth. And I remember back, this is years ago, I think even 5-6 years ago, I was doing a keynote for Decisive Farming.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
And I was like, you know what? You're called Decisive today, and I made a joke that next year you're probably going to be called TELUS, because I said, like, TELUS is really making these like very bold, smart moves in the space. And then the executive team, I could see them looking at each other. And so that was actually just before you had announced.
Sure.
acquisition. So I mean, you guys have been on a growth streak, which is incredible. Now, your role specifically, VP of Marketing and RevOps, it feels like this to me is about seeing marketing and sales come together. And when you, as a leader that owns both, how does that kind of change the way that you structure the teams? And like, is it two teams basically, or is it one team that's got a shared philosophy? And like, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm lucky to have 4 director teams underneath me, and revenue ops, which is what I think you're asking about, is a separate director function, but it sits at the table with brand and product marketing and those sorts of programs. And you know, the reason I really like having revenue operations inside the marketing function is it's all about targeting.
Yes.
So there's an old saying, I heard it somewhere, Andrew, that in marketing, you know, if you're not targeting, you're not marketing. Okay. Yeah. That's a good sort of philosophy to live by. And what revenue ops allows you to do is to better target. And the way I kind of think about it is there's a role on the front end, on the back end. So on the front end, you know, revenue ops enables you to work out, okay, where am I making money? Where I'm not making money? You know, the longer you spend in the marketing game, especially in B2B marketing, you realize there is never just one market. There's 8 different markets. There's 10 different markets. So the revenue operations function lets you work out, okay, where are the new customers? Where are my existing customers that are churning? Where is my biggest cross-sell opportunity? Where is my biggest upsell opportunity? And so it helps the marketing team focus. So if you have revenue ops on the front end, you can be a lot more prescriptive. And then having it on the back end, it helps you make sure that marketing's actually driving real revenue impact.
I love it.
Right? Like you never want the marketing department to be the arts and crafts department. Right? You need in the modern era to be able to say, here's how I contribute to revenue, here's how I helped pipeline grow, here's how I made our sales team more productive. And by having revenue ops on either side, it enables us to be much more efficient and get a real sense if we're succeeding or not. I mean, Andrew, you've been in the marketing game a long time. You know, sometimes you're like, I don't know if this is doing anything. Right? I think it is. And revenue ops enables you to say, actually, you know, we were at X% before and now we're at Y%. I can attribute some of that to the marketing responsibilities. And it just helps you as a leader continue to double down on the strategy if it's winning or not.
Yeah, I think we need more of this because, to your point, you don't want marketing just to be arts and crafts department. You don't want to be guessing at impact. And I think even just having it under a single leader, it does put more pressure in a good way on marketers to go, is this driving incrementality in terms of larger, you know, deal sizes and cross-sell and upsell, and what is the actual revenue impact? Because if you're a marketer that doesn't think through down to the sales side, and this is where I've talked about, does marketing and sales eventually become a single function? Because if you have a marketer that doesn't think about the outcomes, that's not good. If you've got a sales and a RevOps person that doesn't really care about brand, well, that's not good either. Like it's still an emotional decision in a lot of cases, even B2B. So I love the way that you structure that. I think actually more orgs need to be looking at something like that.
Focus beats fragmentation, Andrew. It's one of the philosophies that we have. And listen, as a marketer in the modern era, there's no shortage of things you can do. Right. The trick is, you know, what do they say? Strategy is about deciding what not to do. And I think revenue ops plays a really critical role. Like I'm gonna focus over here. This is going to drive the biggest impact. It aligns best with either our product strategy or our brand strategy. It aligns really closely with our sales team is. You know, I have this vision where sales and marketing are operating together in one market. And I think brands get into trouble when those two things separate. And I think it's really important that we're all working together on the same plan.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. How does that vision, Tristan, change? Maybe it doesn't change, but as you think about this agentic enterprise, and you know, we're with Microsoft, it's a lot about sort of frontier firm, right? And humans and AI agents coming together, and you know, humans managing agents, and this kind of like idea of a hybrid team structure. how does that impact the way you think about team design, whether that is structure, whether that is the roles on the team or the skills that the existing people need to have? Like, how does that kind of impact your planning for team design?
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say, Andrew, we're at the point where we're specifically designing the team around AI. I think what we're very much doing is trying to say, okay, how do I embed it in the function that I have? And I think there's kind of maybe two ways I'd like to answer your question. I think the first part is, what are the skills that I need on the team?
Yes.
And then I think and then there's a question around, okay, how do I structure my team? So
Right.
I actually think the skill set of the modern marketer, Andrew, you could insert lots of different summaries. They're data-driven, they're way to test, they're curious, right? This all sounds familiar, right? Like this is a very common talk track. Turns out they're all the things you need from a marketer in order to take advantage of AI. Right? In my opinion, it's no different. And then I think you'd mentioned agents. I think specifically. So agents are really kind of interesting because it's a shift in the way that people are using AI currently. I think a lot of marketers right now are familiar with generalist AI. And I think the agent world is coming. And, and I'm certainly not an expert at this space, but what I believe is going to happen will be hundreds, thousands of specialized agents that you can deploy inside the organization. Now, some of those you've built yourself, some of those you can buy off the shelf, and so I think this is my long-winded way of answering your question around structure, because I think a modern marketing organization has a brand team, has a content team, has a digital team, has a one-to-one team, has a revenue ops team. I don't see that changing. Like, I think those functions are always going to be there. And in an agent world, what's going to happen is each of those functions are just going to get their own version of their agent, right?
Yes.
So instead of there being one general AI for all functions, it starts to become a lot more specific. So I'm not sure that the structural change of the marketing organization, but how AI gets deployed, I think will certainly evolve.
I think it's a great point. I think I agree with you that domain-specific agents is the unlock, right? Like the generalist AI is not going to be, going to get you the 10x gains. It's like, how do you get domain-specific AI? And to your point, how do you make it more of that truly agentic value add of being able to support teams and departments at scale versus kind of like one-off people? Because that's how, again, you're going to kind of unlock it. But you're right. I mean, a lot of that fundamental mindset is still really critical, right, in this era, because it really comes down to these core fundamentals. It's actually interesting. I was, for, I don't know, the past decade, we actually stopped our intern or co-op program because we just didn't have time to create the best experience. And so we brought on Francis Silva as our chief technology officer, and he's got this, he was very adamant on, we need to restart this program. And I was actually spending some time we have multiple different pods where interns are supporting in the tech practice. And they were presenting some of the concepts and ideas on new innovations, right? The challenge to them is basically, how do you create capabilities or the business that puts us out of business, right? And so they're so excited and passionate. So I as you were talking, I was just thinking, this sort of new skills, fresh grad, new talent is an injection of new thinking that we could use,
Totally. I think I tend to be an AI optimist, Andrew. And I actually think in the world we're getting into is creativity and original thought has actually never been more important, right? So
great point.
I tend to, in a world where you can produce anything, what you produce is actually the skill set you need moving forward. And, I'm pretty excited, to your point, the next generation of marketers, new people out of school, people from other industries coming in. I think that's where the fresh ideas come from.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's a great point. I'm going to throw some data at you. So as you know, Watchtower that we've got here, we built an audience of over half a million B2B marketers globally, so over 500,000. And so what we do is we run obviously queries against it to say, hey, what are opinions or perspectives that this audience has? So this is from September 1st to December 31st of 25. So it's kind of from our Q4 trends brief. And we asked marketers, how do they expect their roles to change in 26 because of AI? And the number one topic that was being discussed, which was 30.6%, was managing AI agents. And we just kind of dovetail into the previous conversation we were having. What's your reaction to that? And how does one become a good manager to an AI agent? What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think it's a really good stat, Andrew, and I think it gets to the core of what a lot of people are feeling right now, which is, okay, I think I can wrap my head around a little bit what this AI thing is.
Yeah.
How do I use it?
Yes.
Right. I think everyone is striving for that payoff. And I know you're a student of the market, Andrew, so you probably heard all about that MIT study that came out in, I think it was August of 2025. Yeah. And the headline was 95% of Gen AI pilots fail. Yep. Wow. 95. And what they were arguing was, listen, a lot of these projects are what I would call AI theater. Yeah. Okay. Really shiny demo, looks really impressive. Everyone gets excited. Yeah, we can do that. And then it never translates to the real world. And I think the MIT study was getting at the core of the 30% that you were referencing. And what they found was, for the 5% that were successful, there were a couple of different things that came in common. And I think you can layer this up to good principles for managing an AI agent. And what they found was, number one, the pilots that were focused won. So we talked about focus beats fragmentation. It's no different in the AI world. So is there a very specific task or problem that I'm trying to solve for? Number one, that's really important. Yeah. Number two, they found that you saw greater success with what I call unsexy work. So there's a whole bunch of it's not the creative idea in the boardroom. It's the, I spend 10 hours a week moving data point A to data point B, or validating point A and validating point C. That type of work is ripe for AI workflows. That's the second thing they found. And the other two things I think were really kind of encouraging, which is the role of people in this. So what they discovered was, when the AI output still had a feedback loop from the humans, it actually drove a better output, right? Yep. And then the final thing that they realized was, you need help. Like, AI transformation work is really sort of challenging. It's like any digital transformation work. Going at it alone, it's not impossible, but you're making your life more difficult. And that's where I think, partnering with, trusted partners like TELUS Agriculture, TELUS Digital, who have done a lot of these deployments over the years. That's the key difference, right? You need a partner in the room. You can say, Andrew, I get what you're trying to do. Don't do it that way. It never works. But if you do it this way, and we help you with the change management, you're going to have a much better output. So I think that gets to the core of the question, Andrew, that people are struggling with. And your question to me was, okay, how can you be a better AI agent? And my hot take on it is, it's actually no different than being a good people leader. And, if you're a good people leader, the best leaders provide clear instructions. Okay. That certainly helps, right? They create a safe place and a productive place to work, right? In AI language, that would be think about workflows and data sets as an example. And then finally, supervision is important, right? Not day-to-day micromanagement, but good leaders know how to coach. It's no different than working with AI. The original output is usually not the final output that you need. Yes. And sort of leaning in and coaching and saying, not this, not that. So that's what I think people are sort of striving towards on that 30% that you mentioned.
Yeah, I think you've nailed a lot of really good points. And I think that the first one for me is, if you're a good people manager, that's what makes you probably a good AI agent manager, right? Totally. And to all the good direction and the content and the examples, et cetera. And I think also probably being reasonable, right? I mean, AI is not perfect. People aren't perfect. And to your point, the first output's not going to be perfect. It's about how do you iterate and coach and guide. And I think that that's key. And the MIT study is obviously very, very interesting because I've seen others where Harvard did this 1 year ago. Harvard Business Review did a study that looked at 420 some odd organizations around the world that were doing digital transformations, right? So not some of it being AI, but not all of it. And
Right.
so what they found is that the failure rate for these digital transformations was 91%. So very, very similar actually, right? To that 95. And so when they looked at what were the reasons why people or organizations were failing, it came down to 6 main factors that were basically nothing to do with technology.
Right.
They were people don't understand why to change. They don't, politics, end user support, leadership buy-in, all that kind of stuff. And so it's actually, as I'm listening to you talk, it really highlights that this is more of a human challenge or human obstacle to overcome than it is technology, right?
Yes.
And I think if we can solve for that, continue to solve for that, we will be good, AI managers in a way. And the one other point I wanted to recap was to your point on finding the right partners. And what's interesting, there's a book called AI Driven Leader by Jeff Woods, and he highlights in his research that I think it's over 50% are late majority or laggards who are actively, trying to hold back AI adoption. So this is sort of the AI adoption curve, right? So it's like over 50% are late majority or laggards. And so even if you are at an organization that says, look, I want to do this and I want to be able to innovate, you've got over half your team that you're going to have to pull over the finish line. And that's I think even more of a reason why you would need a partner like TELUS that has done this before, that has seen the potholes. That's like, I know that there's a pothole on turn 3 and turn 6.
That's right.
This is where everybody falls into. So that I feel like that's such an important, like you need trusted partners, I think more than ever. I really think so.
We're both in marketing, Andrew, so we choose our words carefully. I really like the word partner. And I remember, so Naveen Arora, who's our EVP on the business side, we were in Vancouver a couple of years ago, and during his keynote, he talked about the need to be a partner. And that led to a really interesting conversation internally where we said, okay, what is the difference between a supplier and a partner? What's the difference, right? And the conversation naturally led itself to, are you a commodity? Are you winning on price alone? And for me, it really came down to, listen, partners are not scared to disagree with you, right? They're not scared to say, hey, Andrew, I get what you're trying to do. Our guidance, and based on our valuable expertise, we actually don't think that's the right way to do it. We think you need to do X, Y, and Z. And I actually think having those sorts of dialogues are really kind of important. Right?
It's healthy tension.
Yeah. And
you need that. Yeah.
100%. We're all, and in the AI curve, Andrew, we're all not quite sure how this is going to work. We try X, we try Y. So I think surrounding yourself by people that are co-building with you, right? Are sharing best practices, are pointing out errors, are celebrating your success is very much what you need to be successful. And I think that's certainly what we aspire to be as a brand.
Yeah, I love that. Back on that note of people, does AI change the way that you would potentially look at recruiting and bringing people on? What I mean by that is, let's say if I'm a really strong marketer, but I've never done anything in ag before, right? And I'm not familiar with that space. Are you more forgiving on that because you see, okay, well, AI can help you get there faster? Like, how does AI kind of impact that? Like, does domain expertise become even more important, or is it that we can help ramp people up faster on the subject matter?
I'm smiling, Andrew, because I'd be the world's biggest hypocrite if I didn't say it allowed marketers to learn a new area, because it allowed me to learn a new area. Right. A little bit about my background. I'm the VP of Marketing and Revenue Ops for TELUS Agriculture and Consumer Goods, but I've never worked in this space before. You know,
Right.
my background, I've been at TELUS for over 13 years, and my background's in Canada. Yes, it's in B2B marketing, but I've spent most of my career in the small business space.
Right.
So, you know, I'm coming over to a completely new sector, new customers, new products, new markets. And listen, I used AI to help me, right? Like
Yes.
I leaned on AI a lot to help me prep for the interview. I've used it every day since I started this job. So I have a Gemini gem that I built for agriculture. It's my marketing strategist. It sits on my iPad off a camera, and mate, I use that thing every day. All right, I'm asking it questions, acronyms that I've never heard of before, concepts and meanings where I'm like, I think I know what's going on here, but I'm going to test it. So, you know, I certainly have a lot to learn, but I think I've been able to ramp much faster because of AI if I didn't have it. And at the same time, you know, we talked previously about, you know, in a world where the cost of production is going down,
Right.
and it's never been easier to produce things at scale. Having those people with expertise, and I know this term gets a little overused, Andrew, but I still like it, which is people that have taste. Okay, what do we mean by someone who has taste? For me, it's that Venn diagram of I'm really good at my marketing function. I know what good content is. I know what a good ad is. I know what a good brief is. Intersecting with intimate knowledge of the customer in a particular industry. That for me, those two things, they come together as taste. And so I think in a world where AI is producing things at scale, and we talked previously about the role of people still in that, I still need people to be able to come in and say, is that good? Is that accurate? Could it be better? And, you know, I think when you're working with AI, it's all about having a conversation. Right. And in a way, Andrew, it's not that dissimilar to working with an agency. Right. Like I'm sure you'd agree with me. You would say that, you know, very rarely do you walk into a client meeting and you nail it on the first presentation. Right. Of
course.
There's always a back and forth. We like this, build out that, not quite this, not quite that. And then you iterate and you end up with a much better output. And I would think the people that are the best at giving agency feedback have taste. Right?
Yes.
They understand that Venn diagram, and it's no different in the AI world. So it's ultimately both. It helps new people come into the field faster, and it helps the people with a high degree of taste be more productive.
Yeah, and you know what? As much as taste gets thrown around, I still think we still say it a lot internally here, because I think that is really, you know, we talk about what is taste and how do you codify that? Right. And how do you, you know, put that into a system to be able to evaluate outputs? And again, to your point on the commoditization of mediocre content, I think really good content that people that have really good taste that produces it's actually even more valuable. I think you had said something to that effect earlier. And you know, for us, where we've got an AI agent called Isaac that actually helps with internal onboarding, where people that are obviously new to Intercept, they're like, well, I don't know the processes and who's who and all that. But if you're new to B2B as well, because we recruit somebody or hire somebody because they're super smart, they're a bit of a Swiss Army knife. We know we can put them in different parts of the business and they'll do well, they'll learn. They're still new to B2B. And, you know, it is different than consumer, but it's definitely something that, you know, we see the learning curve, you know, shorten significantly with people that are using it. So definitely a good use case. Let's talk about maybe some other use cases for AI today. Sure. Are you currently using anything for go-to-market or on the revenue ops side, or maybe thinking about something, planning something? Where are you at right now with that?
Yeah, there's we certainly started to use it in multiple places, Andrew. You know, a couple that sort of come to mind is we're actually using it right now on lead scoring.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So you know, leads come in. Okay. Yep. And one of the classic dilemmas in B2B marketing is just because someone downloaded my white paper doesn't mean they're ready to have a sales conversation. Totally get it. So what we're experimenting with right now is we use HubSpot. That's one of the software stacks that we use. And we're using AI to look at the leads that are coming in and saying, okay, how do we clean the data? How do we enrich the data? And then we're assigning a lead score weight to it. So that's piloting. That launched actually just a couple of months ago. So we're still getting the results come in. But that's one area. We're certainly using it in content production. So we've actually built our own internal Gemini. I suppose you could call it a co-pilot, would be the exact term. But the way that works is we integrate it with our keyword analysis. We have fed it in our previous blog articles. We've fed in all of our KPIs around what worked and what didn't. And sort of we're starting to do content production. We still very much have members of the team involved and using their taste to edit those things. And we're actually doing a bit of an A/B test where we're going to look at the performance of that content relative to the content that was written 100% by the humans. See what the trade-off was. So that's very much underway. And then another one that I think we're especially proud of is we're actually using it in churn analysis. So we realized, and a lot of organizations have this, Andrew, they're sitting on a wealth of data. And it turned out that we had over, I think maybe 5,000 customer comments from a combination of NPS survey data and CSAT data. And I don't know about you, but I can't look at 5,000 data points and see the trend. I'm good at pattern recognition, but I'm not that good. And so we fed it.
Maybe 4,000, not
4,000. Yeah, it breaks at 5,000. So we fed it into AI, and we're like, hey, what do you what are the patterns here? What are you seeing? And it's spat out what we call our churn model. Right. And it turns out, we tend to think about churn being an accident chain. It's never one thing that causes a customer to leave. It's one thing leads to the other, leads to the other, leads to the other. Right. And the AI was able to pick up and build a very easy to understand model for why churn behavior sort of is happening. And so we're using that to, spin up 3 or 4 major areas inside of the business in order to drive churn further down. So just three examples that we're currently working on. Yeah.
Very fascinating. I really like that. I mean, to me, I love data. So whether you call it sexy or not sexy, but some of this analysis though is so critical to your point, focus and strategy and what you focus on, what you don't focus on. That to me, I think is where you start to unlock what those 10x gains are, as opposed to some of that AI theater that is more of a novel interface or what have you that does it incrementally 10, 20% better. Very cool. I'd love to track that one and see how that evolves over time, right? Because it's still, nothing's perfect out of the gate. You got to iterate, you got to tune the models, but that sounds really promising though.
Yeah, it's the team's enjoying it. It's enabled us to spin up those projects a lot faster. And it's funny, the output, Andrew, feels right. Like once we got our churn model, and actually I presented it, we were in Vancouver a couple of weeks ago at our leadership summit, and myself and a colleague led unveiled the churn model to our team of leaders in agriculture and consumer goods, and everyone was like, "Yeah, that feels right. That very much is reflective based on the experience that we're having," and that gave us the confidence that we'd worked it out, right? Right. And you go back to our prior conversation, the MIT study. We didn't take the churn model and just say, "Okay, that's the answer." We took the churn model, went back and forth, asked it some questions, shared it with people that in the room had taste, and they all said, "Yeah, that's reflective of what's going on." So, always nice to go back and check with the experts that it's accurate.
Yeah, you got to validate it. It's actually, it reminds me of one of the things where we're finding good success with is actually blending that with the content piece. So for one of our clients, they wanted to produce some thought leadership content on AI, of course. And just even saying that was the challenge, which is everybody's got content on AI. Right. So how is our content going to stand out? And one of the things that we did is we said, okay, let's talk to sales that have the taste, that are closest to the customer. And we got our hands on the top 100 global win wires globally at the organization. And then what we did, and these are like technical road mapping, blueprinting stuff, and like stuff that, Francis and our tech team would fully understand, but like no one else. And so what we did is we spun up a model to be able to analyze all of these 100 wind wires. And again, they were all, secure and compliant and all that. We're not sharing any of that information. But what we did is we identified what were the 3 main use cases that people were using AI for. And then when we went to market and we said, these guides, all these assets are inspired by the top 100 AI first movers globally, that sparked a ton of interest and turned out to be a top performing campaign. And I think because it was based on a ground truth asset and not something that we could have really done before, which is be able to go through all of these technical documents by 100 customers, really understand it, synthesize it, and turn that into real content territories. So that's like a new capability. Anyway, so just kind of blending the two on the data side, and then how does that power better content too, in addition to focus and targeting, right? Anything on the sales piece and the RevOps side, or is that kind of blends both a little bit?
Yeah, I think on RevOps, we're in the process of building this capability, Andrew, and it goes back to the conversation we had previously around the MIT study and what was really successful, and it was the unsexy work we talked about. One of the things that we're looking at Revenue Ops is the thrilling area of contract compliance. So it turns out that there is often a lot of steps that get missed between what the customer agreed to and what ends up getting in the contract. And so the Revenue Ops team is currently looking at a way that we can basically scan the contract before it goes out to the customer, compare it back to the internal notes on that agreement, and say, well, hang on a minute, we thought Andrew agreed to buy the product at X price, but we're actually quoting at Y price. Halt. Don't send, let's confirm what's going on here. So that's a very smart, simple, but smart use of AI that we're looking at, where you're like, that's a much better use of resourcing, is to automate that as opposed to making that someone's job to sit there and go through every line of a contract and saying, is this correct or not? So we haven't launched that yet. It's in the process of being built, but I think it's a pretty exciting idea.
Amazing. Well, because that's got real business impact. And I think that's one of the lenses in which we should look at AI use cases is, does it solve a meaningful problem? And if it's super niche, great. Doesn't matter. Like if it solves a business problem that has a quantifiable impact to the business, we should pursue it, right? 100%. I love that.
It's the perfect candidate, right? It's got a clear workflow. It's clearly defined. There's a clear problem statement, right? You can do some checking with the humans, right, to make sure that, okay, we're training the data. You can go back to the AI model and say, okay, you missed this detail on the contract, look for that in future rounds. So it's those sorts of experiments, Andrew, where you could call it maybe everyday innovation. I'm a big believer on that. Yes, you want the big industry smashing ideas, but a lot of the time it's a small idea like that, but you compound that over 100 or 1,000 ideas across a large organization, and all of a sudden you've drive real change inside of the group. So I really like those smart uses of AI. Yeah, clearly measurable and it's got business impact.
So in that same study, I'll throw another insight at you. So when we asked what AI initiatives marketers are likely to scale this year, top 5 were AI research assistants, multi-agent workflow, AI search optimization, AI campaign orchestration, and agentic campaign optimization. So the last 2 are somewhat related. What's your reaction to that list? And I mean, it actually lines up in some cases too to some of the things that you were talking about as well. But what's your reaction to that list, and how does it compare to how you're thinking about stuff?
Yeah, if I think about that list, Andrew, I think you can layer that up to maybe there's 2 major themes that are going on here, which I think has been a thread through our conversation today. And I think the first thread that kind of jumped out to me is, how do I become more efficient? Right. And I don't think there's any marketer on the planet that has more resources than ideas. It's always the other way around. There's a million things that I could do, but based on budget and time and the laws of physics, I just can't get to them.
Yeah.
So I think within those questions that you were mentioning, I think there's a desire to say, just how do I get more done?
Yes.
Right. And I think that's a universal challenge for all marketers and all people in the business profession. And then the other thread there, I think about optimization was a word that you used, Andrew.
Yes.
Campaign orchestration, search optimization. When I hear optimization, I always think about the customer and getting better alignment with what they want. Right? Like I'm a big believer that the way that you make a campaign more efficient is by nailing the right message to the right buyer at the right time.
Yep.
Okay. So, and listen, in a world where, you can produce anything at the click of the button, we've talked about this idea. It's never been more important to zero in on exactly who you want to talk to and why. And a great example of that would be in the agriculture division, right? When I'm thinking about how do I market to an agronomist in North America, that is very different than marketing to an ag retailer in the UK. As an example, right? Or in consumer goods, going after food service in North America looks very different than retail customers in Europe. Okay.
Yep.
So how do I use AI to be able to understand my segments, make sure that it's the right idea to the right person at the right time, and that all layers up to driving better efficiency. So, I agree with that list because I think at the core of it is anything that removes friction, that's a good thing. Anything that makes you more efficient, that's a good thing. Anything that maximizes impact is a good thing, which is why I'm not surprised that marketers are asking the questions that you laid out.
Yeah, and I think you're bang on with that. I think efficiency is really key, and I think the challenge that we see is that as these new use cases come online, and whether that's a point solution or whether it's a custom GPT, a custom gem, or an AI native web app, the sprawl starts to then grow. And then what we end up seeing people do is this sort of like Control C or Command C and Control V, right? And it's like very manual, very error prone. And so I think there's an opportunity to integrate a lot of this, where it's like, hey, you take all these existing AI point solutions or capabilities and bring that together. I know that that's one of the theses that Francis and team on the tech side is really bringing all of, like, as you know, like we've got these different AI capabilities, bringing that into an operating system that then allows marketers to actually do more with less. Because if you're logging in and out of tools and you've got that tool sprawl, it can become very inefficient very quickly. So I agree with you. I think efficiency is probably number one on that list. And I think related to that, there's kind of like, two modes that we tend to see, which is for AI, which is AI in single player mode, which is the one person, one co-pilot, right? And that's like good because you're going to get the 10, 20% gains in terms of efficiency. But then the multiplayer mode for AI, which is like building systems, platforms, workflows that power departments and teams and a lot of the stuff that you're doing, which is what is that predictable, churn analysis and process that then supports the broader team, right? Not just one person. I think that's going to be really key to get to the promise of AI, all these like the 10x gains, but also do more with less and the efficiency that, we're all striving for, right? Because I think we're all feeling probably busier than ever, at the moment. So, yeah,
I think that there's some really interesting evolution going on there, Andrew. You go from generalist AI one-to-one, my AI, like how I use it personally. Yeah. And I think you mentioned then the next level up is the team AI, right? Yeah. Okay, how do I make the demand gen function more productive? How do I make brand more productive? And then, and I think we're just at the cusp of this. And then you start getting into agent-to-agent AI, right?
That's right. Yes.
And I certainly am not an expert in that space, but I think that's definitely where the next evolution is going to become. And I think as marketers, that's the next thing we have to get comfortable with is, okay, how do I get the interdepartment AIs kind of coordinating together. And then I think that unlocks the 10x organizational enhancement that you're talking about, Andrew. So it's a really nice sort of evolution, right? Like individual, group, organization.
Yeah, and it makes me think too of like the Molt book stuff that we're seeing. That's that's all AI and some of the fascinating things that's happening there. No, but you're right, because I think it's agent to agent interaction, which is what I think is the concept behind. I think OpenAI. There was a leak that showed what their stages of AI basically look like, and at the level 5, I believe it is, at the highest level, is AI organizations, which are a vision where it is AI agents that are working together like bees in a hive that would be as powerful as 50 Microsofts or 50 Amazons, right? So that's really, I think, the vision that a lot of them have. Now, related to that, though, when you think about the B2B buying and how that changes, in that same research, when we asked how is B2B buying changing in 26 because of AI, almost 3/4 said more content for AI, which gets us to this reality of AI agents and AI models, LLMs, may increasingly become the intermediary between the agronomist that you're trying to win and us as a vendor, as let's say as TELUS. And so how do you think about that? Like, if AI is the gatekeeper, how do you win the gatekeeper in that scenario?
So I actually go one generation back.
Okay.
When remember, Andrew, we used to use something called a search engine.
Yeah. What is that again? Yeah.
Remember that era? And if you said, okay, a couple of years ago, how do I quote win at search? And how you won at search early on were around keyword stuffing and a whole bunch of hacking. All kind of went away because platforms like Google and Microsoft realized that, listen, we still need our tool to be useful.
Yes.
Right? And a search engine that gives you information that is not helpful will not get adoption. And where SEM ended up was, listen, it's all about having legitimate authority, right? Whether that was content authority or technical authority, actually was both, were equally important. And the search engines were looking for that and were rewarding the brands that had legitimate authority and penalizing those that didn't.
Right.
I think the AI world is no different. I think content authority is still important. Technical authority is still important. There's increasingly going to be something called entity authority, which is, are you a reputable organization? Are the things that you're saying generally trustworthy? So I actually think we can learn. I keep coming back to, listen, in a world where you can produce anything, having the great idea, the content that's actually helpful, that has something interesting to say, I think will still win, right? Like I heard once that, the challenge with AI content without any human intervention is always going to be average. Just because how large language models work.
Consistent B.
Yep. It's not going to be great. It's not going to be bad. It's going to be perfectly average, right?
Yeah.
So I think in a world where, okay, let's think through the incentive structures and how AI ultimately works. It's still going to be about delivering helpful information to humans to be able to make decisions. So I think on the back end, even if it's increasingly AI to AI, having that vision and saying, am I saying something that's interesting? Is it helpful? I'm still convinced, Andrew, that the original idea is going to win over the generic idea. So who knows? Maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of the way that I think about it.
But I think it's interesting to look at it that way, because at the end of the day, if you figure out how to game the system, so to speak, but you're still not the best solution, people are like, well, it's recommending me crap, right? And then they ultimately use a different platform. So in some ways it does, it's kind of like natural selection in a way. It's like the best stuff is gonna rise. What we see, and again, this is all still very early, so this could change. This will change in 6 months from now, because new models bring new behaviors, right? But in our GEO platform, where we can track like how our clients are showing up and etc. What we find is that, it's really important when you do this testing, because there's a lot of like GEO platforms out there, right? But it's really important that when you at least want to get a baseline, that you get the actual prompts right. Because when you look at a lot of these platforms that'll say like, hey, we'll tell you how you rank. When you actually look at the prompts, they're very generic and often consumer focused. So what we found is like an initial, hey, let's go, before we had to build our own, it was, let's go use the existing, like the profounds and the existing platforms. And what we found is that the prompts were not reflective of the actual audience themselves. So what we ended up having to do is get a ground truth data asset of doing interviews with ITDMs and BDMs and specific personas to actually say, I want you to draft a prompt. If you were to look for this in this specific scenario, draft your prompt. Because if you get the right prompt, that's step one to be able to get the right insight. And I think the other piece that we learned is that you need enough volume of prompts to test it with some statistical significance. So again, I'm not picking on profound, but like the existing platforms that we saw, they would run 10 or 12 prompts. And we were like, no, we need like 500 at least. And so that's actually what we ended up doing. So we were like, okay, based on this ground truth asset, we know how people generally structure their prompts that in these specific roles and these buying scenarios. Now let's go run 3,000 at a time across different models. And so coming out of that, there's a few things that we're seeing, and we kind of like abbreviate this as beta, because it is a beta. It's not final, it's living. But as an acronym, the B, what we learned is it's best for. So when you think about you're writing a piece of content, really being specific over who your solution is really best for, and the models reward specificity. They reward when you declare who are you really best for, and the counterbalance to that is actually the T in beta, which is trade-offs. Who are you not best for? And what we find is that if you don't declare who, in what scenarios that customers should look for other options, the model will make it up.
Yeah.
So you almost need a guide. What's like, who are we best for? What's the trade-off? And then the last two pieces that we've come across is the E in beta, which is evidence. And, yes, you need proof points and all that kind of stuff. What we find in the models is that if your proof point sounds and looks like bullshit, the model also thinks so. So you could actually see the reasoning to go, and we see this, and we love our OEM clients, but, when it comes to battery life on a laptop, how many times have we seen up to however many hours of battery life? And you're like, wait, I don't get that. It's these kinds of claims that, like, if they seem unbelievable to a human, the models will penalize, is what we're seeing. And then the last point is just answerability, the A, which is just, is it in a right format? That's why you see a lot of people doing like sort of FAQ style that answer a very specific question. Because back to your point on SEO versus GEO, SEO, I think the average search number of words in a search is like 3. And then the average number of words in a query, like in a ChatGPT, is I think closer to 16. So it's less about, to your point, it was about gaming the system a little bit, early days of SEO, just like put the right keywords. This is like, do you have a really thoughtful answer to somebody's question, right? That is following that kind of framework. So anyway, all kind of like everything, the rules are kind of being rewritten as we go, but it is fascinating though, to have like a dual track audience, right? It's like you have agents and you have humans that you need to equally win.
Yes.
So
it's the ultimate form of market segmentation.
Yeah.
Right? Right? Like, there's not one group I'm going after. Now there's both the AI group and then the actual buyer group, right? And I think as B2B marketers, Andrew, we know a lot about that type of marketing. We're comfortable with buying groups. So we know, hey, if you're purchasing a major piece of software, there's not one person that has to sign off on that. There's 10 different people. All of them have different criteria for how they make decisions. So in a way, it's like, again, this is a theme I think that's emerging on our chat today. The thing that's made you successful as a modern marketer will serve you very well as a marketer dealing with AI.
Yeah.
Right. Same thought process. Right.
Yep. I agree. So last question before we let you go, Tristan, is no one's got a crystal ball, but as you look 12 months out, maybe even 6 months out, because things are changing so fast.
Sure.
What are you most excited about? And then maybe what are you most anxious about as you look at the next, let's say, 6 or 12 months?
Yeah. So I'll on the weekend, Andrew, I was reading a really awesome article in the New York Times.
Oh yeah.
Called "Where is AI taking us?" Great question.
Yes.
Where is it taking us? And I liked the approach. So they got 8 very prominent AI thinkers, academics, people that have created AI companies, and they all answered that question. And the only thing they had in common, Andrew, is no one knew. Right? Like for everyone, there was an optimist, there was a pessimist. For everyone who thought the world was going to change in 3 months, some people thought it would take 3 years. So, I think the reality is no one has any idea. I have no idea. But again, I go back to that Mark Twain quote, which is history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And I think we can look back at other tech innovations for inspiration. And that could be modern agriculture, modern airline travel, computing, the mobile era, social media, all these technologies and their diffusion, right? And what they all had in common, Andrew, is no one knew. Right? The timelines were wrong. The final use cases were wrong.
That's right.
And I think it's the same with AI. And your question to me is, what excites me versus what scares me. It's the same thing in that I don't know how this plays out. Right? We're all living in a sci-fi novel right now. However, I choose to be an optimist, right? I generally believe, and I look at, again, all these technological evolutions that have come before. Sometimes it doesn't go according to plan. There are always cons to go with the pro. That's just the way it works. But listen, I know I enjoy using the technology. I enjoy talking about it with other people such as yourself, Andrew, that have a passion for this. It certainly has made me more productive at work, has made me more productive at home. I generally believe that this is going to be a good thing for all of us. But how that plays out over the next 6 months, 12 months, 10 years, 100 years,
who knows?
No idea. No idea, but that's kind of part of the fun. So we're all going to find out together.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that you're right. I mean, we look at past labor saving technologies, and generally what we've seen is that even like the ATM as an example, it's really about job evolution versus job loss. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is that initial disruption where there's the transition as jobs evolve. And so I think we're probably headed for a bit of a messy middle, but I too choose to be an optimist, not just for my own sanity, but I genuinely believe that this will be a net positive coming out of this. But on that note, Tristan, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to come chat with us, and thank you for sharing, very, very openly and transparently the things that you're working on. Good reminders of the difference between innovation theater and actual practical, call it the non-sexy use cases that perhaps have the biggest value. And as much as what is changing, what is not changing are really the fundamentals. And a lot of it comes back down to people and the human side of this all. So Tristan, thank you so much for chatting, and we'll do it again sometime.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate you having me on. Thank you.